Hey everybody, this is Andy, aka Love Retro BTW, across Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch. I do a podcast every Saturday called Cafe BTW, a morning gaming podcast, a retrospective look at the wonderful world of retro gaming, from interviews to guests. Join us every Saturday, like a Saturday morning cartoon, starting at 8 a.m., 11 a.m. Eastern. Also, if you're on Twitter, please join the brand new retro gaming community, a place to share, connect, and show your love for the retro gaming community. All the links are down below. And remember, enjoy the Gamers Week podcast.
Coming up on Gamers Week podcast.
The fact that it's going to be pretty close relatively to coming to Earth is actually a rarity, right? It probably won't be that close to Earth for another, couple 100 million potentially.
So wait, they're not going to load Bruce Willis in a spaceship and like send him with a bunch of drillers?
Armageddon.
Yeah. Have to take care of it. I'm so disillusioned now. That
was an asteroid and not a comet.
Ooh.
Wow.
Asteroids made out of rock, comets made out of the term that you used in the past is dirty snowball.
This is so fascinating.
That's a term I've heard before.
It's not a yellow dirty snowball.
Not because he looks like Leonardo.
Makes me laugh just like Jim Carrey.
I think his name was Steve. She likes me for me.
Not because. Anytime somebody says Steve, though, I think of Mallrats, and it's tell him Steve, Dave. They're like really mailing it in with character names when they go with Steve Dave.
Steve Dave. You got two first names.
How else am I supposed to get the gerbil out?
Lemon face. Lion face. Lemon face. Lemon face. Welcome to Gamers Week podcast. Like the name says.
I'm sorry, just like there was no pause, no hesitation, like right into it. Oh God, sorry.
We'll do it live. Welcome to Gamers Week podcast. Like the name says, we analyze the best, worst, and weirdest headlines of the past week in the video game industry. This is episode 54. Today is Wednesday, January 4th, 2022. Remember, it's not 20. It's not.
Oh, you messed up.
Sorry, my bad.
What's funny is I was just getting ready to make a comment about being sure that you write 2023 on your checks. And here we go. We're saying it's 2022. So we messed up too.
Everybody's allowed one. Okay. Everybody's allowed
exactly.
one.
Everybody gets one. My name is Donnie G Retro, and I will be your host this evening. My two gracious my two ho-hosts. My two wonderful.
Both are correct.
Yes. My two gracious co-hosts with me this evening. The first person melts like an ice cube when you whisper in his ear, please do the needful.
Oh.
Brian, a.k.a. Retro Game Brews. How are you doing tonight, buddy?
It's kindly do the needful. And that, to me, is the most passive-aggressive sentence on the planet.
My second host likes her French fries cold and numb, just like her feelings towards Alpha Chads. Her name is Writer's View, a.k.a. Blue. How are you doing this evening?
That's not even a little true about the French fries. I just said that if you're fried...
But the Alpha Chads.
Yeah, the Alpha Chads. Yeah, totally. But if the French fry dies in the first 5 minutes, then it's not a good French fry. Looking at you, McDonald's. I'm just saying.
This week, we are celebrating the 1-year anniversary of Gamers Week podcast. We published our first episode back on January 7th, 2022, and it has been an incredible year with a ton of amazing milestones. So in honor of our first anniversary, We did a live stream mini episode last night on Twitch. If you weren't able to tune in, here's just a taste of how the party went. Okay, I will do it. I will create a full motion video game.
You heard it here, folks. Everybody clip this part.
I will create one. I will do all the acting, or maybe I should employ some other people, like Charles, the garbage man that comes around every Thursday, or the postman or whatever. I will do something. I will create a full motion video game, and I will try to get it released on Steam. Probably won't be this year, but I'll try to do it.
Because your garbage man doesn't have he's got to do.
No, when some rando on his route says, "Hey, will you come be in a video of mine?"
We're definitely going to be doing more of these types of streams, so if you don't want to miss out, be sure to follow us at twitch.tv/Gamers Week Podcast. And like a dummy, I didn't turn on save VODs. So
See, now you have to follow us on Twitch. Otherwise, you're going to miss stuff next time Donnie forgets to hit the save button. But it was really fun. It was a really fun time. We had a great turnout. And yeah, I'm actually looking forward to doing a couple more of these.
Yeah, of course, you're nervous the first time you do something like this, but it turned out swimmingly well. I think we were able to, I think for the most part, keep up with the comments. The AMA section was a lot of fun, and everybody was really active, stuck with us, and we appreciate it. It was a blast, absolute blast.
Absolutely. I felt like time just flew by. It didn't feel like 2 hours. I would like to apologize to those whose questions I missed. It's a little difficult to try and sift through an active chat. So if I did miss a question, if I didn't get to it, I sincerely apologize, but I will try to do better on the next stream.
And to be honest with you, there's no proof that you didn't do that correctly.
That's true.
You're right. Because it's all gone. It's gone. It's magic. All right, let's take a look at our reviews, reactions, and requests. New Dad Gaming says, LOL, already hooked with Kagenius. I mean, I've started a trend, have I not?
I think you have. We're going to have to start putting out a lot of tweets with hashtag Kojenius.
What would happen if Kojima actually saw that and sent us a swag bag of something like cool Silent Hill or Metal Gear stuff, or Hideo Kojima officially licensed underwear?
Because he wore it first?
Capriefs.
Capriefs.
Darkwing J says, TMNT Shredder's Revenge agreed in the top 10 games of 2022. It had the spirit of the Konami games, and we need more of those style games. And Doongie Forever says, it was weird, in a good way, LOL, to actually see you all while you were talking in the live stream. And I had to close my eyes and just pretend I was listening to the podcast. Just kidding. Do we have faces for radio?
Yep. That's a definitely faces for radio joke right there.
My mom always tells me I'm beautiful, though.
She also tells you you're cool, too.
And now it's time for the
very important poll.
That sounded very businesslike, Blue.
You know what that sounded to me, though? Like,
what?
Have you ever seen the movie Escape from LA?
Yes,
long time ago.
You've been a million years.
It sounded to me like Pam Grier's Hershey, where they actually took her voice and slowed it down by like 1.5 times.
Oh, that's probably what this thing did. That's supposedly me as a boy.
Which also checks out for the Hershey. Yeah.
Didn't we already hear you as a boy whenever you were sick?
Oh.
That was not me as a boy. That was me like in 50 years.
Oh, chain smoking in 50 years, right?
Yep. I need to start chain smoking now so that in 50 years I will sound like that.
Hashtag just do it.
Hashtag life goals.
All right. Every Monday on Twitter, we post our VIP. That is our very important poll. And if you'd like to participate, follow us on Twitter at GamersWeekPC. So the question for this week, what is your favorite Nintendo Switch online retro collection? In fourth place, we have the Genesis / Mega Drive at 13.4%. Third place was the NES at 17.1%. Second place, the N64 with 18.3%. And the overwhelming winner, Super Nintendo, with 51.2% of the votes. So let's go ahead and look at some of the comments from the poll. At C. Holland Art said, for me, it was Genesis. It was nice to play the more expensive games. I was too cheap. I mean, games that were too out of my price range. At PlayPodco said, I knew SNES would win, but N64 is the most nostalgic for me. At GSWAP Project said, none of them are that great, but I'd say the SNES library offers the best sum of their parts for what's offered, even as a raw N64 fanboy apologist. At Johnny Boombot says, that's a tough one, but so many classics that I love across all the generations, but NES holds a special place in my heart for memories. And at Smoky Toasted said, needs GameCube. I agree.
Which is probably coming eventually.
I hope so. I mean, there's been rumors of Game Boy and GameCube for a while now, just waiting for one of them to actually show up. So, how did you vote in the poll, Ryan?
I went with the NES, but for my purposes in what I've used it for. So one of the nice parts about the NES is that obviously you have the opportunity to play online against other people. Now, I would use that, of course, for RGB high score tournaments and get-togethers and all that kind of stuff, and I've done that quite a bit. So it's been a really great experience for that. I think prior to that, what you're looking at is potentially RetroArch and trying to bring people together on a particular server. And it's difficult sometimes, and it's not always reliable. But the Switch Online is. So it's been amazing for that, just from bringing the community together, having fun playing these games. Tecmo Bowl is one of them. Ice hockey is another example. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! Actually, technically, I think it's just regular Punch-Out! Because obviously they don't want Mike involved with that. But the Super Nintendo, of course, has a lot of RPGs. So if I'm looking to play stuff on my own, I would probably lean more on the Super Nintendo. But for all of the time I put into it, the NES, I think, is the one for me.
All right. What about you, Donnie?
Unfortunately, I have not put in a lot of time on either one of these collections. So I know the Genesis and the N64, you have to have a separate subscription in order to get these. Mm-hmm. Now, I've done the math, and I think it's like $74 for a year, which basically equates to, I think, $6 a month. So in all reality, if you wanted to pay an additional $6 a month to get the access to the limited libraries of the N64 and the Genesis, is it worth it? To me, no, it's not, because I have a multitude of these existing libraries already on my PC as emulation. So I couldn't really pick one, but if I had to, I'd say the SNES, because I was actually on there today and I saw some of the games that you could play. And before, I think they even had Earthbound that you could play. So Earthbound, I think there was a Breath of Fire 2 on there today, a couple of other different RPGs, like you said. A lot of the fun games that we've come to know and love, like Street Fighter, A Link to the Past, and Super Mario World. So I do like the fact that they're making these readily available for people who own a Switch and who subscribe to the online pass for them, because a lot of these people probably don't do emulation. Yeah, they own a computer, but they're not sitting at their computer wanting to play video games all day. They want to sit on a couch. So you have your Switch hooked up to your TV. You can lay back, prop up your feet, have your controller in your hand, and have access to some of these classic libraries.
Blue, what about you?
So, like you, my initial thought was to vote for Super Nintendo because that has the most games on the service that I actually like, because we're talking Super Mario Kart, Super Mario World, Link to the Past, Super Metroid, Donkey Kong Country, all that kind of stuff. But then I thought, well, wait a second, let me pull up my Switch and actually see if I can find how long I've spent on each one. And the Super Nintendo Online, I have spent 90 hours playing.
Dang!
But the NES, I have played for 245 hours. So that kind of settles it. Now I have to vote for the NES Online. And to be honest, the vast majority of that is Dr. Mario. I'm not going to lie.
So surprised.
I know.
Still getting that practice in.
Yep. clearly it's my favorite. Objectively, it's my favorite.
And there was some reasoning behind this poll. So one of the things is that, Donnie, you're going to be involved with the stream coming up Thursday. So if you're listening to this on Friday, it's already happened, so you can check out the VOD. But tell us a little bit about what's going to be happening over on our friends at Retro Gaming Expo.
So I was asked to be a guest on the Retro Gaming Expo Twitch channel with our good friend Redox PDX. We are going to be talking about our experiences at the PRGE, the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, and we're also going to be playing some games from the SNES collection on the Switch Online.
So I can't wait to see that because I'm really going to be excited about it. Of course, again, if you're listening to this, you could certainly check out the VOD. But last year they did a live stream from the actual con as well. So that'll be something that if I don't attend, I'm definitely going to want to check out and see what's going on there.
You can and you will attend.
They just put out the dates, October 13 through 15, 2023. So everybody get ready so that you can do what you need to do and get scheduled and get to the show.
Be there or be square.
If I do go, even though I'm not a hugger, I will hug anybody who comes up to me. So
yes.
Oh, I wouldn't have said that.
Except for Donnie.
I make no such promises whatsoever.
Donnie gets a full-on mouth kiss.
Yes.
Oh, you just made his whole year.
Oh, that's a mouth hug.
Well, that's usually a different thing, but hey, whatever.
All right, let's take a look at our patron shoutouts.
We couldn't do what we do without the help of our gorgeous patrons. Here are the generous folks supporting Gamers Week on Patreon. Terry Kinnair, Ducks in Disguise, Jim and Colleen, Games with Coffee, Hybrid Divide, You Fall Before Me, Davey PGH, the Redox PDX family, including Shannon and Luke, Zach Huge Thanks, Rerun Gamer, Number One Blue Sick Voice Fan, Random Retro Dude, Princess Kitty Mew Mew, Rai Rai's Secret Best Friend, Mega Retro Man, Gamatroid, Emo-esque, Bill Tucker, Rybread's Number One Fan, Fruitcake's Number One Stan, Ducks with Thick Thighs, The Wizard of Zardoz, Claimant 71, Great Saiyan Man 81, BNT Zilla Guy, Geek With That, Crunchy Kong, Sheriff Snacks, Frank Grande, J&L Game, Love Retro DTW, Steven San, and Ramboski. If you like what you hear, and we really hope that you do, please consider joining us on Patreon. Your support helps cover the costs of producing the show, as well as other cool stuff we'll be doing like prizes and giveaways. You'll also gain access to our weekly patron-only bonus cast called Gamers Week Uncut, patrons with benefits. Visit patreon.com/gamersweek or follow the link in the show notes to learn more.
And now let's take a look at our headlines for the week. Our headline segment is proudly sponsored by the Retro Game Club podcast. It's a fantastic family-friendly retro gaming podcast. In each episode, Rob and Hugh pick 2 games to play and discuss, as well as news, interviews, and other topics. Right now, they want to hear about your retro resolutions for the new year. Send your answers to email at retrogameclub.net or follow the link in the show notes. Blue, what are your New Year's retro resolutions?
Well, my retro resolution this year is the same as every year in that I want to get through the backlog. I always do such a terrible job of it. I often will pick up a few games, play them for a couple hours, never actually finish them, go on to something else. So this year, as every year, I shall resolve not to do that. I shall be better. I shall beat games, and we'll see.
We'll check back on you in 3 months.
Yeah.
Ryan, what's your retro resolution? Backlog, of course, but also I want to host some RGB high score tournaments, so that'll be coming soon. Already kind of got things in the works a little bit, been thinking about that, so we'll be back. RGB high score, potentially transitioning it over to GWP high score, Gamers Week podcast. So, yeah, we'll have some fun with that.
Very nice.
What about you, Donnie? What's your retro resolution?
2 resolutions that I have. One is to actually take down a couple more world records this year. There are 2 games in question that I've worked on before that I've actually beaten the world record, but I never had the actual cart in order to do it. Now I do. So I have Final Fight 2, courtesy of Mr. Ryan Payne here. And I just recently acquired Lightning Force Quest of the Dark Star for the Sega Genesis. So record it, send it on in, and there you go. My other resolution is to not be such a crackhead with my retro gaming pickups. I'm going to spend a lot less time on Facebook Marketplace and not scour it every day, all day, and just kind of take a step back and maybe do it every once in a while.
Or you could just do it for me.
Yeah, I was going to say, your pickup stories are some of our favorite stories.
Okay, I'll continue to be a crackhead. I'm sorry.
We are enablers. We're like, oh, come on, man, have a drink, you know?
Right. You've had a long day. Go ahead and prop your feet up. Here, sip this back. Okay, yeah, I deserve this.
All right, first up from Bloomberg, video game testers form Microsoft's first union. A group of about 300 video game testers working for Microsoft Corporation's ZeniMax Studios voted to form what will be the software giant's first union and the largest in the video game industry. Microsoft formally recognized the union, sticking to a labor neutrality pledge it made last summer, according to a statement from the Communications Workers of America, which represents the union. Microsoft said in June it would agree to recognize any group of workers who voted to organize as it seeks to win regulatory support for its $69 billion purchase of Activision Blizzard Incorporated. The labor movement is gaining steam in the gaming industry, and the action at ZeniMax follows the creation of unions at 3 studios owned by Activision: Wisconsin-based Raven Software, Massachusetts-based Proletariat, and Blizzard Albany in New York. Quality assurance workers who test the games for bugs and ensure they work properly have been among the first to unionize in the games industry over low pay and poor working conditions. In a statement, tester Skylar Hinnant called the move an empowering victory and said the unit hopes this is the year in which game workers across the country exercise their power and reshape the industry as a whole. ZeniMax, which includes the Elder Scrolls publisher Bethesda Softworks, Doom creator id Software, and several other developers, was acquired by Microsoft for $7.5 billion in 2020. A spokesperson for Microsoft and ZeniMax said the companies look forward to engaging in good faith negotiations as we work towards a collective bargaining agreement. So my first question after reading this is, if Microsoft was not forced to be on its best behavior because of all the scrutiny around the Activision Blizzard deal, would they have otherwise tried to stop this from going through?
Absolutely, they would.
Yeah, because what have we talked about on previous episodes is that Microsoft, I think they were, correct me if I'm wrong, but weren't they against their testers forming a union? Or trying to do so?
Yeah, that was Activision.
Okay, Activision. Okay.
Right. Activision did all the shady stuff behind the scenes to try to get them to not unionize.
But, obviously they do have something that they're working on right now, a huge deal. And they're trying to smile for the camera, all the while, trying to smell that nasty fart that somebody just let out. It's like, oh, yep. I'm smiling. I'm just going to take that and let you do your thing, which it's very good for the studios because as we've heard from some of the guests that have been on the show regarding video game testing, it's a brutal environment for them to work in.
And honestly, I was starting to think, even just a few weeks ago, that the push for unionization when it comes to video game employees, it kind of waned a little bit because we haven't really heard a whole lot on that. So it's nice to hear that the momentum is still going. It's still happening. Because I have said in the past, I support this idea. And I'm just glad that it's continuing to see some of these organizations pop up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel pretty safe assuming that Microsoft wouldn't want the union to go through otherwise if they weren't being looked at so closely, because that's just what big companies do. I mean, there was even Nintendo had accusations against it of union busting. And then we already talked about Activision doing its best to make sure that the games tested couldn't unionize. So I guess if there's a silver lining to this topic that we've been discussing for the last several months over and over and over again is that, hey, Microsoft is allowing this to go through so that they look really, really good.
I wonder after this whole deal goes through, are they going to renegotiate?
I would not be surprised.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either.
Renegotiate with the actual union or the company?
Yeah, and lay off an entire division of people who we've unionized or do something like that.
That they could definitely do that. It's like, oh, yeah, great. Hey, congratulations on joining this union. Yeah, we're all for it. Oh, by the way, we're going to go ahead and take all the assets that were formerly under ZeniMax Studios and we're going to move them over to Bethesda.
Right.
So, yeah, we're no longer going to need you guys. So, thanks. I could totally see that happening.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's the MO of every major corporation. I mean, Blue, you kind of pulled out the idea of union busting. I mean, there's an entire industry that's third party that you can hire to help you with the union busting process. And that's big money. It's huge. And to think about it, if for that point of view, if you're going to pay somebody millions of dollars to prevent a union from coming into your office, they're anticipating that union is going to cost them more than millions of dollars. And while I'm saying I love the fact that this is happening, I'm cautiously optimistic. Because to the whole point, there are a lot of companies out there that are willing to figure out ways to get around loopholes and pull the rug out from other people.
Especially after they've already gotten the good press and the union is of no further use.
Exactly.
And it's like the whole recall thing with the auto industry. Is it going to cost you more to pay out via lawsuits and everything like that if something happens with the vehicle, as opposed to just recalling all these vehicles and fixing the problem?
And that's it. They're going to take some time to figure it out. They're going to put it all in. They're going to say, what's the max amount of payout we would have to pay? Oh, you know what? That's less than we anticipated. Great. Have a great day, guys.
Yep, absolutely.
We already got through this whole scrutiny part of our deal. We don't really care if it's bad press because everybody's just going to forget about it in 4 weeks anyway.
You're not wrong.
All right, next up from VGC, Sony PlayStation 5 has cleared 30 million sales after its biggest month yet. PlayStation 5 has now sold through to customers more than 30 million units. Sony Interactive Entertainment has announced the sales milestone is shared during a CES showcase on Wednesday and means that the PS5 has now shipped to retailers, which is the data it usually shares, at least 10.7 million units during Sony's current fiscal year, which ends March 31st of 2023. Typically, shipped figures are higher than sold through numbers, and Sony Interactive Entertainment's shipped sales target for the year is 18 million units, a figure it's stuck by in its most recent sales results published in November. And it is now just under 3 months to find the up to 7.3 million units to achieve it, though the real numbers required is likely less. Speaking during Wednesday's CES show, Sony Interactive Entertainment President Jim Ryan claimed that December was PS5's biggest sales month yet, and that increased availability means more consumers can now purchase one. Sony previously said that it would aim to ship 23 million PlayStation 5 consoles in its next fiscal year, which begins April 2023, which would put the console ahead of the PS4 during the same stage of its life cycle. The electronics giant shipped 3.3 million PS5 units during the 3 months ended September 30th, 2022, aka fiscal year 2022 Q2. It said in November, which is the exact same figure it managed during the same period last year. Speaking during an earning call at the time, Sony said PS5 sales were going according to plan, and it believed that it could still achieve its 18 million sales target. The company manufactured 6.5 million consoles during Q2, it claimed. Where are these consoles? I have gone to Target, Best Buy, Walmart, GameStop, and no one ever has one. I've never seen one in person. I want to know where they are, and I'm mad about it.
I have a confession.
Oh?
I saw two at my local Target the other day.
You.
Apparently that's where they are, Ryan. They're in St. Louis.
I think it was after Christmas, but I'm strolling through Target. I can't remember what I'm picking up, but I'm walking by the electronics aisle and I like something caught my eye. I was like, oh, let me just take a look. Like, oh, two PS5s sitting down there in the case. And there was another guy who just like kind of walked by me with his family. And he's just like, he stopped and looked, and he looked at me. I looked at him. And I didn't know if this was going to turn into a like, I want both of them. But I'm just like, man, I can't believe I'm actually seeing this right now. He's like, yeah, it's kind of weird. I'm like, yeah, good luck if you want to buy one. And I just kind of took off. I'm still not at that point where I want a PlayStation 5. I really don't want anything to do with any new gen console just yet. I probably will pick one up here maybe within the next year or 2 years. Do you think it's not unreasonable to ask for a price drop in the PS5 since we're now at 2 years old, 3 years old?
You're never going to get a price drop until demand drops.
Damn it.
I hope that you're cursed. I hope that you walk back into every Target from here on out and there are no PlayStation 5s until 2030 when the PlayStation 6 comes out.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I haven't I haven't seen PlayStation 5s in stores ever either where I am. The only reason I have one is because of our patron Fruitcake's #1 stand.
Correct.
Okay. I forget who goes by what name. Yes. Fruitcake's #1 stand was kind enough to help me get one a few months after they launched. And so that's the only reason I have one, because I too have never seen one in real life otherwise.
I'm actually still seeing people trying to scalp the PS5s and Xbox Series X's, but right now they're kind of getting laughed off of Facebook Marketplace. Like somebody will list one up for like $800 and you'll see a ton of laugh emojis. And the next thing you know, it's taken down. Then you got other people who are trying to sell an open box. Like they opened it, they played it, and it's like, I want to sell it, but they're trying to sell it for the same price as a brand new one.
I was seeing people like a couple days ago, people trying to sell one without the box, not just the open box, just the console and the controller for $600-700.
What?
I don't think so.
I was like, I really, with those folks, I just want to send them a message, be like, would you do $2?
If you waste their time a little bit, then it's been worthwhile.
All right, next up from The Verge, Sony announces Project Leonardo, a PlayStation 5 accessibility controller. During Sony's CES 2023 presentation, the company shared that it's working on a new accessibility controller kit, codenamed Project Leonardo. Sony shared in an official blog post that it consulted with video game accessibility advocates like Able Gamers and Special Effect to create a controller that is highly configurable and works in tandem with many third-party accessibility accessories. Leonardo's kit features PlayStation 5 face and trigger buttons that can be swapped around a wide circular gamepad, as well as a joystick which can be repositioned relative to the gamepad, for players to find a configuration that works for their strength, range of motion, and particular physical needs, and has 4 3.5mm aux jacks to plug in third-party accessibility accessories, similar to Microsoft's adaptive controller. Leonardo can be used as a standalone controller, as a pair, or in concert with the PS5's bundled DualSense wireless controller, making it adaptable for a range of accessibility needs. Leonardo's physical customization capabilities are matched by its software options. Leonardo will allow players to map functions to various buttons and save 3 different configurations as profiles for ease of use. While Sony's first-party games have been pretty good at offering a robust suite of accessibility options, both The Last of Us and God of War Ragnarok have won game awards for accessibility, it's lagged in terms of accessible hardware. Microsoft released its adaptive controller in 2018, and in 2021, it launched a program in which developers can submit their games to Microsoft to have them evaluated for accessibility and tested by gamers with disabilities. Project Leonardo is still in development, with no word yet on a release date. And I gotta say, I really applaud the fact that companies are doing this. They're putting more focus into this, because for someone with a disability, trying to play a game and feeling left out because you're not being thought of. Your needs are not being taken into account. And it stokes the fires of memory here. A couple of years ago, there was a commercial for, I think it was Microsoft Xbox. This kid with a disability was on there. He was playing, and the controller was specialized for him. And he was able to whip these kids' butts at the games that he was playing. So it made him on the level playing field as all of these other kids. And I really applaud that.
From a personal perspective, one of my father-in-law's friends, he unfortunately had an accident in his late teens, early 20s with a diving board, and he ended up becoming partially paralyzed. So he's paralyzed essentially from the waist down, and then doesn't have full motor function of his hands. But he's also a huge video game fan. He had always been one when he was younger. And as a result of that, he has had to essentially kind of create his own controllers, obviously with the help of someone else. And he plays Red Dead Redemption 2 online religiously, like every single day. Right?
Nice.
When it comes down to it, I think the point that you were making as well is that just because you have a disability doesn't mean that you have to not be able to experience the best parts of gaming, right? Gaming is such a fun and exciting hobby. And making it accessible to everyone is awesome. It's a step in the right direction, and it's also a step in the right direction outside of gaming as well.
Well, I hate to be a Debbie Downer here.
Okay.
I will agree 100% with you guys. This is, of course, a really good thing. Microsoft and Sony are doing this because gaming has reached a point where if it wants to continue growing, it needs to give people absolutely no excuse to not to play, essentially. Like according to the CDC, 1 in 4 US adults live with a disability. So that's a huge portion of the population that maybe just can't play your games, not because they don't want to, but just because you haven't figured out a way to allow them to play. So I think that this is not something that Sony and Microsoft are doing out of the goodness of their hearts because they really care. Because they really care about everyone being able to game on a level playing field. I think they don't give a rat's, but I think they want to start selling things to those 1 in 4 U.S. adults with disabilities. And so maybe it doesn't matter that that's their motivation behind it, because these things are still going to be out there in the market and they're still going to benefit a ton of people. But I don't want to pat Sony and Microsoft on the back too hard over it.
Yeah, let's avoid maybe some of the pomp and circumstance.
Right, exactly.
Right.
I just hope that there's a contingency of Sony that's going, like decent, good human beings that have been pushing for this. And sure, in the presentation it was, by the way, we'll also be selling a lot more consoles and games.
I mean, because you want to believe that in the general good of people, they have kindness and goodness in their hearts, and it's not just a money grab. But at the end of the day, what is it more than likely?
I don't want to say it is 100%. I still want to believe.
He said more than likely. What is it more than likely?
Okay.
That leaves room for a little shred of belief while still being realistic.
My nihilism hasn't completely ramped up to 11.
Spend more time with me. It will. All right, next up from GameSpot, once in a lifetime E3 comet, which has nothing to do with gaming, is coming close to Earth soon. A comet that was only just discovered in the past year will approach Earth, where it may be possible to see with the naked eye as soon as later this month. And you might want to go out and look for it, as experts say the comet isn't likely to return to Earth's orbit for at least another 50,000 years. The comet C/2022 E3 was first seen in March 2022 via a huge telescope when it passed through Jupiter's orbit. The comet is referred to as the E3 comet, though it has nothing to do with the big game show E3, and it comes from the Oort cloud of the Earth's solar system. The E3 comet, which experts believe dates back to 4.6 billion years ago when the solar system formed, is coming as close to Earth as it ever will on February 2nd. CBS News reports that NASA believes the E3 comet will be easy for anyone to spot with binoculars or with the naked eye in less populated areas with better visibility and less light pollution. If you live in the Northern Hemisphere, the best time to look for the E3 comet is in the morning in January as the comet races west. People in the Southern Hemisphere will have a better shot at seeing it in early February. If you're at all interested in catching a glimpse, be sure to try, as Royal Observatory Greenwich astronomer Jessica Lee told Newsweek that the comet may not return for at least another 50,000 years.
So I think finally Fight Club was right. It said when we start exploring the universe all the corporations will get to name things. So this one has been named E3. The next comment to come through is going to be PAX West, PAX East comment.
PRGE, officially sponsored comment by PRGE.
Well, I was thinking that, of all the gaming conventions that might even coincidentally have a comet named after them, they really picked E3. It's like the worst one.
Right.
Well, the interesting part about it in the past, comments have been a indication of calamity or the death of a king. So maybe it is a little bit more relevant.
I see what you did there.
One of the interesting parts about this, if you think about it, the last time it passed Earth was 50,000 years ago. Imagine the snapshot of that. Like you passed Earth 50,000 years ago, you come back and you're like, oh, some changed around here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the reason we're talking about this is, let's be honest, this time of year, there's not a lot of gaming news. So
Indeed.
I wonder if these comets that circle, that keep coming back into our orbit, are they getting closer every single time?
So the problem that you run into with a comet is that because it's a ball of ice, they're really difficult to see because in order for it to be seen, it has to warm up enough to create its tail. Because what ends up happening is the sun's radiation heats it up enough for the ice to turn into vapor, right? And then all of a sudden you see the tail. Prior to that, it's just a rock in space. There's no way for us to actually be able to see it unless there's something bouncing life off of it.
Ryan is so excited to get to talk about this stuff.
Oh, sorry.
Don't be sorry.
To answer your question, the kind of the ellipse of the comment, most of the time, no, they are not shortening its ellipse. And honestly, the likelihood that it would pass by the Earth at the same distance, I mean, the fact that it's going to be pretty close relatively to coming to Earth is actually a rarity, right? It probably won't be that close to Earth for another, couple 100 million potentially.
So wait, they're not going to load Bruce Willis in a spaceship and like send him with a bunch of drillers?
Armageddon.
Yeah. To take care of it? I'm so disillusioned now.
That was an asteroid and not a comet.
Ooh.
Wow.
Asteroids made out of rock, comets made out of the term that you used in the past is dirty snowball.
This is so fascinating.
That's a term I've heard before.
It's not a yellow dirty snowball. All right, so why don't we jump into our top 3 new releases for the week? First up is Toy Soldiers HD Platform Switch. Survey the battlefield and carefully place your units before the first wave of attackers arrive. Jump directly into the action and control machine guns, artillery, mortars, flamethrowers, and more. Take to the skies and rain down from above. Take on enemy bombers or earn your victory in exciting dogfights. A much-loved classic, overhauled and upgraded for a new generation, Toy Soldiers HD contains the original game, all DLC, including some out-of-this-world new enemies to take on, and some wacky new experimental levels. Next up is We Are Caretakers. There's only 2 releases this week. I just realized that.
Yup.
We're going through a dry spell right now. Hopefully it'll be over soon.
Got it. Next up is We Are the Caretakers, platform Xbox Series X and X, Xbox One, and PC. We Are the Caretakers is an Afrofuturist squad management RPG. Assemble a secret faction of protectors and squad building systems inspired by Ogre Battle, Darkest Dungeon, Black Panther, and XCOM. Defend the endangered animals your world relies on in strategic turn-based combat. Define your approach to a global resistance by balancing your reputation, funds, research, animals, and alliances. We Are the Caretakers is an exciting new type of strategy game blending squad building RTS with pause, narrative, and turn-based JRPG combat into one thrilling campaign. The game introduced players to an original sci-fi universe with nuanced characters, grim dark narrative, deep mysteries, layered unit management challenges, and escalating conflicts that have no easy or absolute solutions. The Kobayashi Maru. It's developed by a critically acclaimed and diverse team, including IGF nominees, ex-Microsoft, and ex-Blizzard developers. So based off of these, Donnie, which one are you going with?
I took a look at We Are the Caretakers. The graphics didn't really do it any justice. It did not tickle my fancy at all. I looked at Toy Soldiers, and I didn't realize that this was a remake of a game that came out back in 2010. It made me, initially when I looked at the screenshots, it made me think of Army Men. And I had a lot of fun with Army Men back in the day, but this doesn't look like it plays anything like that. This is an action strategy game. It looks fun because you're controlling little tiny soldiers, and it's like a little miniature battle and stuff like that. I might pick it up and play it for like 30 minutes and just to check it out. But I mean, I got to be honest, neither of these games is really hitting home with me.
Blue, what about you?
Well, I think there's a reason that these are the games releasing during this time of year. Toy Soldiers HD. Never heard of the first game. I don't like war games, so We Are the Caretakers. It sounds like it's made with a lot of passion, and it sounds like they're trying to give it some legitimacy by saying it's developed by IGF nominees, ex-Microsoft and ex-Blizzard developers. But for one, it sounds really complicated, like it's trying to be everything all at once. Usually when games try that, they don't really hit on anything. The other thing is, this is a pet peeve of mine. Stories that are based on like a cause or a message first, and then everything else is constructed around that message. That makes me crazy because it makes for really shitty storytelling. So what about you, Ryan?
I'm kind of torn. For me, at least, from a genre perspective, they're the kind of games I want adjacent in a way. You know, We Are the Caretakers seems like it's almost every genre is what it sounds.
Exactly. Just be a little bit of everything, but then end up being nothing.
I might check it out out of curiosity because if I look at the visuals too, it actually kind of reminds me of Spore, oddly enough. Maybe like with better graphics, but the lighting and like the perspective and things reminds me a lot of Spore.
Spore. Oh, good Lord. I haven't thought of that game in ages. Holy crap.
And then Toy Soldiers, I thought it was going to be a little bit more cartoony based off of the name, but it reminds me of just like plastic Call of Duty looking is what it looks like.
Civil War stuff, Call of Duty. You're like, no, there's no need to go back and revisit this. I gotta say, I might change my mind because I just saw a screenshot of a cadre of soldiers running into battle with their commander who's holding a gun and a French baguette. So that alone might have me interested in checking out this game to see what other kind of crazy and weird things that might pop up. All right, now let's take a look at our main topic for the week. From GameIndustry.biz, analysts offer predictions for 2023 in games. Dr. Sirkin Toto of Canton Games, last year's predictions were Nintendo announces Mario Kart 9 and a new mobile game. Wrong.
Where was my Mario Kart 9 he promised?
You got more tracks in Mario Kart 8.
Yeah, that's fair.
His 2023 predictions are, not all studios have hiked prices to keep up with the rise of production and other costs in game development so far, but gamers are likely to see prices go up across the board in 2023. I believe this trend will not only affect individual AAA titles, but also subscriptions and hardware, especially for Microsoft. If Nintendo doesn't release new hardware, I expect Switch prices to remain stable this year. However, in 2023, the gaming industry should continue to see relatively little effect on growth from a possible recession. I generally think there is only a small correlation between an economic downturn and the size of the gaming market in a given year. 2023 will likely be no different.
All right, next is Piers Harding Rolls from Ampere Analysis. Last year, he said the console market, including hardware, will be flat. That was wrong. No Switch Pro, which was correct. And the PS5 would outsell the Xbox Series X and S, which was also correct. So as for his 2023 predictions, Will the Microsoft Activision Blizzard deal go ahead? Yes, but with further concessions. The deal could drag on into the second half of 2023, especially if the FTC's case goes to court. If Microsoft agrees to concessions and avoids court, the first half of 2023 is possible. I'm expecting the console market to stabilize in 2023, following a decline in 2022. The game's release slate is looking really positive. If the availability of PS5 holds up, it has a strong chance to be the best-selling console of 2023, with the Switch entering the later stages of its life cycle. I'm expecting Game Pass to grow significantly in 2023 on the back of highly anticipated first-party games entering the service. If the ABK deal goes ahead, expect to see more mobile games in Game Pass. I know.
Exactly.
Carol Severin of the Medea Research Group did not have any predictions last year. Thank you so much, Carol. But in 2023, he said the effects of inflation and tightening disposable income will be in full swing in 2023. Consumers will be looking to do two key things: decrease overall spending and or increase value for money from their purchases. Mobile gaming and free-to-play games will be at an advantage compared to other formats in terms of user growth, as will game subscription services a perceived money value saver. The adverse macroeconomics climate couples well with Xbox cross-platform and hardware agnostic efforts, as well as its focus to provide value for money and mitigate the requirement for consumers to part with large sums of money at once. A combination of these dynamics means Xbox is better positioned to thrive in a recessionary environment than PlayStation. As a result, Xbox will significantly narrow the gap in terms of console ownership and usage in 2023.
These are super boring predictions.
They're like logical, and
I know.
There's no necessarily hot takes involved.
Yeah, there's nothing to look forward to except for just how the economic landscape of the globe is going to just make everything boring and expensive.
Is there any of these, though, that you agree with in particular?
I am not happy about the prediction from Dr. Sirkin Toto, who says that prices are going to continue to go up. Because as we've discussed before, once they go up, they're not going to go back down when things get better. So considering we already saw a $10 per AAA release increase with this current generation, I don't want it to keep going up.
And I think that that's kind of what Carol is saying as well, is that when you start to see the lack of availability of capital, right, in your bank account, because either layoffs or the fact that you got to spend more money on your day-to-day stuff, you're going to make some gaming decisions that still allow you to game and still allow you to get the value you're looking for, but maybe not buy like you used to. And
Right.
I agree with him on that. I think that that's more than likely what will be the future, at least for the first couple of quarters of 2023, is that you'll see a natural kind of pullback from people from spending. And as a result of that, Xbox is going to see a lot more adoption of Game Pass. I don't really care about mobile, so they can go ahead and do whatever they need to do. But the Xbox, I think, will be more hardy or in a recession environment, that PlayStation is going to not be able to meet that 18 million units sold goal because of it.
I just hope we don't see the absolute worst parts of mobile gaming and free to play continue to grow, to see companies go, oh, this is even more successful. Now let's all do it. And it'll have effects that'll go way beyond this coming year. That's really, really what I don't want to see.
And to that end, it's funny that Stadia decided to shut down this year.
Well, nobody wanted to buy the games on there.
Right,
that was the thing.
right,
Why do you want to buy 6-month-old games for full price on a streaming platform?
But what I'm saying is that GeForce Now and Stadia would have been positioned to be in the right part of the market for that. Obviously, if they change their business model about purchasing full price games 6 months out, I think GeForce Now allows you to sign up with a subscription similar to Game Pass. So that might thrive in this environment. Similar to, when you start to see gas prices rising, people are now switching over to electric cars. And that's something that the market has kind of been dragging their feet on this whole electric car thing, but it's been around for decades. And finally giving that push to say, okay, now it's time to buy that EV because you're not going to be able to afford the gas for your, combustion engine.
Though if you can afford to buy an electric vehicle, you're not feeling the pinch that hard.
Fair. That may be true.
I definitely, for one, don't want to see video games become more expensive. I do like the fact that Xbox's Game Pass is giving people the opportunity to play AAA titles day one. So when they're launched, it's like, if you have the Game Pass, you go and play this game right now. And that's something we talked about previously. It's that whole try before you buy thing. Now, granted, if I'm getting the game as part of Game Pass, then why would I want to run out and spend $70 on this game when I pay a monthly subscription for it right here? I used to not be a fan of the monthly subscription service because of the fact that if I ever were to cancel that, I'd lose access to all those games. In the grand scheme of things, if you buy like maybe 5 titles over the course of a year at $69, $59, let's just say $69, so $70, you're going to end up paying $350 a year to play those 5 games.
Right.
Whereas the Xbox Game Pass, I don't know how much it costs right now. Is it $9.99 a month?
Yeah.
Yep.
So you have Xbox Live and you have the Xbox Game Pass. So if it's $9.99 for both of them, you're essentially paying $20 a month. You're still spending less money to have access to all of these games for an entire year.
$240 versus $350.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, and as long as households are feeling the financial crunch, you know what piece of video game entertainment is completely free? Gamers Week podcast.
Yes. Look at that plug.
Now that we've covered other analysts' predictions for 2022 and 2023, let's go and take a look at the Gamers Week podcast predictions for 2022. Blue had stated that Elden Ring would be Game of the Year in 2022. Was she right? Of course she was.
Of course. Was there any doubt that I would be right?
Mr. Ryan has said that Starfield will not come out in 2022, and we will still only know that it's just a space game. Was he correct?
He was half correct. It did indeed not come out in 2022, which was a pretty safe bet. So good job there, Ryan. But they have given us a lot more information. So we know it's not just a space game. It's Elder Scrolls in space. It has space lockpicking.
Space lockpicking. Oh.
And by the way, I prefer the term Professor Rybread. I didn't go to 6 years of retro gaming college to be called Mr. So thank you.
Oh, I'm 6 years. How come you don't have a doctor, Rybread?
Right.
A lot of people go to college for 7 years.
I thought you mailed away for your certificate, Professor.
Shut up. Don't be telling people. Come on. It's on my CV.
And just like that, Donnie had predicted Sega will be back in the ring in a big way.
I'm sorry, they can't hear you in the back.
I'm sorry. Well, let's move on, shall we?
No, I think we need to go over that a little again.
So back at the start of 2022, I predicted that Sega, yes, Sega would be back in the ring in a big way. And boy, was I wrong. Because the only thing that Sega did that was really noteworthy was they came out with another Sega Genesis mini console.
The third one.
Come on, Sega. We thought we were past this. The 90s were so many years ago. Your bad business decisions should have been left back there.
Hot take.
You know what, Donnie, though? I admire you for just owning up to your bad prediction instead of trying to spin it in a ridiculous way to make yourself look right.
Basically, we're glad that you didn't pull a Ryan.
Right. That was exactly where I was going with that. With his 4 1/4 technical points for the Game of the Year guesses.
I get a big fat 0. Now, the other honorable mention that Sega did was that they made their own video game studio.
Mm-hmm. Well, they opened another studio, yeah.
Right. Okay, so they opened another studio, and I thought, like, whoa, wait a second. I thought that was going to be the catalyst that sets off. You know what? Sega's like, you know what? Screw it. We've got this video game studio. We're making some great games. I don't know if I want this on the Xbox or the PlayStation, and I certainly don't want it on the Nintendo Switch because screw those guys. Let's make a console of our own. And they let
with blackjack and hookers.
Yeah. Oh, I wonder what the name would be. Just the blackjack and hookers console.
Oh,
Yeah,
no, it'd be Bender. Bender Rodriguez.
A sleek metal design with a nice cigar popping out the side.
Every time you turn it on, it says, "Bite my shiny metal ass."
So, who wants to make a prediction for this year?
My prediction is that the Activision Blizzard deal will not go through.
Bold take.
And when we talk about this in 2024, of course, I'm going to define what not go through means in a different way. Set your own expectations, is what I'm saying.
All right. What do you think, Donnie? You want to run with Sega again?
I really do. I want to do the parlay here and just say this year Sega's going to come back in a big way. But I know what's going to happen. They're going to release another mini console, and it probably will be the Dreamcast or the Saturn, or God knows, it's probably the Sega CD Mini, for all we know. But I think what I'm going to predict is that Nintendo will not create a new piece of hardware this year, and in fact, maybe, just maybe, Nintendo is done with the console.
What?
Maybe they'll go the dongle route. Maybe they'll say
Dongle.
We're going to have our games based in the cloud, making use of something like AWS or Azure or Google Cloud. And as long as you have a strong enough internet connection, you can play our games. There you go. You just have an app on your TV, your smart TV, your Roku player. It launches the Nintendo interface for the AWS or what have you, and you can use your existing Pro controllers, or maybe we'll come out with new Pro controllers. They're going to take full advantage of the cloud architecture and technology, and I think it's coming.
I think you're right, but I don't think it'll be 2023. I think it'll probably be more like 2025, 2026.
It's my prediction, Ryan.
Oh, my bad. No. You're wrong.
He was mansplaining your prediction to you.
Right? It's like, no, what you meant to say. It was
right,
gonna,
exactly.
Okay,
I think what you meant to say.
He was Ryan-splaining.
Professor Ryan-splaining. Thank you.
Sorry, I forgot the professor. Blue, what about you? What's your prediction for 2023?
So because last year I went with a Game of the Year prediction, I feel like I need to continue that. So looking ahead to the biggest games in 2023, for Nintendo, their biggest game is clearly Tears of the Kingdom. Breath of the Wild won Game of the Year back in 2017. So there's precedence there. The biggest game coming out for PlayStation is probably Spider-Man 2, which is probably going to be a huge crowd pleaser, but not something that the journalists are going to flock to. And, maybe Final Fantasy 16, which is really 50-50 whether that's going to be a train wreck or not. And then the biggest game coming out on Xbox is hands down is Starfield. And I think that has everything written all over it that says Game of the Year for 2023. Big, expansive, it's highly anticipated, and being an Elder Scrolls type game, I think it's the kind of stuff that journalists will love. So I think Starfield is a shoo-in for Game of the Year in 2023. Okay.
What about, have you seen any of the gameplay for Skull and Bones?
Yes, I have.
And does it not look like a Game of the Year candidate?
No, it does not.
Okay. Just checking. All right, before we move on, let's take a quick break to talk about our sponsor. This segment is proudly sponsored by the Elitist Podcast. It's a show where three friends and occasional guests play games about video games, including trivia, game show games, and more. Here is this week's trivia question. Nintendo has never been afraid to experiment with products and services. Some work, some don't. Over 60 games were planned to utilize one of these failed experiments, but only 9 were released. So which one are we talking about? Tune into the Elitist podcast this Wednesday to hear the answer. You can find the Elitist on your favorite podcast platform, and we'll also have their links in the show notes. Do you guys have an idea what it is?
I know what it is.
You know because Tim tells you.
And details?
Well, Redacted only had 2 games.
Mm-hmm. Now,
Redacted.
You kind of think of what?
Redacted.
But there were only 2 games that officially listed as
Redacted.
games. It was
Redacted.
and
Redacted.
Okay.
Maybe something like the Redacted.
correct. The
Redacted. Ha-ha! I did it.
Damn, Blue. You're so smart.
She's wicked smart.
How do you like them apples? All right, fellow kids, slide on those Bugle Boy jeans, make sure your Reeboks are pumped up, undo one strap of those jumpers and roll up the opposite leg, and make sure your Honda CRX has gas, because where we're going, we'll certainly need it. This is the Retro Rewind for January 1991. Some of the top Billboard songs and artists of this month were Madonna, Justify My Love, Stevie B, Because I Love You, Damn Yankees, High Enough, Janet Jackson, Love Will Never Do, Without You, Bette Midler, From a Distance.
Bette Midler.
Right.
One of these things just doesn't belong here.
She's like, hey there, fellow kids.
It's like when Jethro Tull won the Grammy, the first Grammy for metal.
Yeah, and everyone's like, really? Jethro Tull? Metallica's just like sitting there like, are you sure about
Like,
this?
are we a joke to you?
And then the next year, Metallica won, and they said they were glad that Jethro Tull wasn't in the running this year.
Suzanne Vega with Tom's Diner, Surface with The First Time, Ralph Tresvant with Sensitivity, Wilson Phillips with Impulsive, and CNC Music Factory, Gonna Make You Sweat. Let the rhythm take control.
Jock jams,
Let the
baby.
rhythm move you.
Which, if memory serves me right, they made no money off of that because they didn't actually credit the person who was singing in the background.
Really?
Yeah, there was big controversy, especially because the music video had a woman who was much more fit than the original singer. Yeah, big controversy.
Hot at the theaters this month, Home Alone, even though it was released in November of 1990, it still ranked number 1 at the box office in January.
Wow.
Kindergarten Cop, he's not a tumor. He's not.
Thanks for the tip, kid.
Dances with Wolves, The Godfather Part 3, Awakenings, Edward Scissorhands.
I love that movie.
I loved it too. 3 Men and a Little Lady, Lionheart with Jean-Claude Van Damme, Look Who's Talking 2, and Mermaids. And I the last one I was just like, Mermaids, what the hell? And then I remembered it was a movie with Winona Ryder and I believe Cher.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Winona Ryder had a big month at the box office then.
Yes, she did. Hot at the arcades was Pigskin by Bally Midway. It was a prehistoric rugby game set in 621 AD. I think it did very well at the box office. Or the arcades, sorry. Pit Fighter from Atari. I dumped a lot of quarters in that game. And Knights of the Round, which I don't remember ever seeing that game as an arcade cabinet.
It's a fantastic Super Nintendo game.
Of course it is. I loved it.
But the problem is the Nintendo or Super Nintendo game, it plays exactly like the arcade one where it's intending to steal your quarters.
Yes, yeah.
Trying to shove quarters in your Super Nintendo.
It's not working. From the readers this month, Danny Jandra writes, I'd like to give my 2 cents on the long-awaited SFX. And what he's talking about is the Super Famicom. I don't think it will be as hot as everyone expects it to be. First off, both the Genesis and the TurboGrafx 16 have a huge head start. Secondly, its price will be too much for your average video game fan, which is probably 60% of the NES users. In other words, people who like video games but aren't into them as a hobby and aren't willing to pay hundreds of dollars for a collection. Also, the SFX's starting lineup of games isn't big enough to turn many heads. Finally, I suspect that other systems as good as the FXX will arrive by the time it's released. For example, Konix has their multi-system in Europe. Sony might make a 16-bitter, or maybe another unknown might pop a system with scaling and rotating, a high meg count, and lots of fire buttons. In my opinion, these are the most important aspects in a system.
Oh my god.
Then again, the SFX might rock the video game scene as its predecessor, the NES, did. Who knows? So this guy's all over the place. And guess what? The multi-system never even released because it failed. And it was going to have a price point of about £200. So tell me again how that price point would have been okay for your average video game fan when the Super Nintendo came out at $199?
I'm guessing though that this guy is related to the same person who was like, "Oh, well, the Titanic is completely unsinkable; it'll never sink."
Right.
Or, something could happen, it could sink it. Well, who knows?
And how big of a starting lineup do you actually need? You just say Super Mario World is.
Right.
Right. Some of the earlier game magazines were calling it Super Mario Brothers 4.
Right.
And how big Super Mario Brothers 3 was at the time. They're like, oh, wait a second. How are they going to expand on that? Okay, yeah, I got to see it. And people are going to flock to that thing, no question.
Right. Now, I will give them a little bit of credit in that this first time that Nintendo released a new console, I guess an upgraded console, parents were resistant. They didn't see why they should have to buy another one.
Right.
Now people are just used to getting new consoles every couple of years. But back then, it was a tough sell, and so I'll give him that. But I still would have put all my betting money behind Super Mario Brothers 4.
Right. Come on.
In the video game news, new Nintendo licensee Natsume has given GamePro 10 special edition copies of their new game, Shadow of the Ninja, to give away to their readers. What makes these carts so special? Unlike the retail version of the game, these carts allow you to type in passwords to jump to different levels. Passwords will be provided with the carts. You want one of these special collector item cartridges? Yes. Well, all you have to do is send them your name, address, phone number, and age, yada, 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 to this particular address. 10 lucky winners will be selected, et cetera, et cetera.
Can you give me that information? I think I'd still like to give it a try.
I would love to, man. But they had to be postmarked no later than January 31st, 1991. So we're a bit late.
I mean, I could fraudulently. And then when it arrives and they contact me and they say, "Hey, wait, what happened here?" And I'm like, "Oh, it must have been lost in the mail all this time."
Yeah.
Right. And it's now just arriving. I'm willing to bet that somebody sold one of these special edition copies at a yard sale and had no idea. Like when they were bundling up their NES games to sell, like, oh, yeah, we don't play this anymore. Here's Shadow of the Ninja. And nobody knew that it was one of 10 special edition copies that was not like the retail. So somebody out there probably has this thing and they have no idea about it.
Everybody quick, go check your cartridge.
Right.
In other Natsume news, the licensee has established the Game Master Challenge. All you have to do is send proof to Natsume that you've completed any Natsume game, and you'll get a certificate of accomplishment and a Natsume Game Master sweatshirt while supplies last. And I gotta say, man, if companies were to do this, like if I could go back to whoever made Outrun and say like, hey, I hold the world record for this one. Like, oh, great. Here's your certificate. Here's your sweatshirt. Yes, please. I would love to have that. That would be awesome.
I mean, you guys know that hoodies are my jam. So if they're giving away sweatshirts, I'm all over that.
I bet you would love to have a closet full of just hoodies and hoodies and hoodies, right?
Mm-hmm.
See?
Yeah.
We know stuff.
And to answer your question, who developed that? It was Sega.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was a first party game. Yep.
I should have known that. I should have known that.
Wow, that's embarrassing.
Slipping in my old age. Please don't. Please cut that. Some of the games released this month: G.I. Joe, The Real American Hero for the NES.
I remember that game.
I love that game.
Mm-hmm.
That game was challenging when I was a kid, and I think last year or 2 years ago I went back and completed it. And it was still challenging today.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Kabuki Quantum Fighter for the NES.
If you've ever wanted to play a game where whipping your hair is...
I know, I remember that. I was like, what the are you doing? This makes no sense. They'll make a game out of anything. Zombie Nation for the NES. The Adventures of Bayou Billy. Wayne Gretzky Hockey for the NES. Gain Ground, Wings of War, Ultimate Quicks, Sword of Vermilion, all for the Genesis. Airbuster, aka Aero Blasters, for both the Genesis and the TurboGrafx 16. Sinistron for the TG16. Sid Meier's Civilization, the OG for the PC. Leisure Suit Larry 5, Passionate Patty Does a Little Dirty Work for the PC. I've never played that one.
That's not the full title?
That is the full title.
Wow.
I am actually, and I've never played it, but I bought the Leisure Suit Larry complete collection on Steam a couple years ago. And yeah, it's staring me right in the face. So they skipped over 4, but part 3 is Passionate Patty in Pursuit of the Pulsating Pictorials. I'm going to have to go back and play these.
I just can't believe in 91 there were 5 of those, and none of those were used in that lawsuit between Nintendo, Sega, and, like the video game industry.
I guess that probably goes to show how successful they were.
I guess, right?
Yeah. They were cult classics for sure. Now, the top game in this month's Game Pro was Lakers versus Celtics for the Sega Genesis, winning top marks in all 5 categories, which were gameplay, fun factor, sound, graphics, challenge, etc.
And yawns, apparently.
And oh god, it was overwhelmingly positive in yawns. But the game did feature Michael Jordan, so it had that going for them. Now, I don't remember if I know the Bulls versus Blazers game for the Super Nintendo. I don't think that had Michael Jordan. I think this might have been one of the last games that he was able to lend his likeness out before he kind of shut that down. Because if you remember most of those NBA Live 94, 93, stuff like that, I don't think those had Michael Jordan.
They had Jaiko Morden.
His cousin fifth removed. If you want your copy of Herzog's Zwei or Truxton for the Genesis for $12, or Michael Jackson's Moonwalker for $16, then you had better run, not walk, to your wall-mounted telephone and call Funko right now at 612-533-8118. I'm sure the phones still work, and they have to honor those deals, right?
Are we going to try that number?
Let's do it right now.
Let's do it right now? Okay, let's do it right now. We're going to do this as part of the podcast. We're going to call this number. I believe it's New Mexico. 612-533-8118.
It's only 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock? Yeah.
Robert Gabal does not answer.
Aww.
If you feel you received this message in error, please hang up and try your call again later. Message NY.
Boo. Maybe if we try our call again later, it'll go through.
Probably.
I feel like this was an error, so yes.
And from now on, anytime I get something with a number, we're going to try it live on the podcast.
Love it.
I love that idea. All right, kids, thanks for hanging out with me this evening. This concludes our Retro Rewind for this month. Magnum PI is about to come on, and I have to go set the VCR to record for my grandma. Hey, I got to get money somehow to buy all these retro video games, right?
He's so handsome.
Thanks, Grandma.
My grandma was recording Murder, She Wrote all the time.
Murder, She Wrote, Knots Landing, Falcon Crest.
No, the Waltons. The Waltons were a big one. I hated that show.
Me too. Good night, John Boy. All right. Thank you for listening to episode 54 of Gamers Week Podcast. And a big thank you to the Retro Game Club Podcast, the Elitist Podcast, and Love Retro BTW for sponsoring this episode. Don't forget to check out their links in the show notes. If you want to connect with Gamers Week, follow us on Twitter at GamersWeekPC, email us at gamersweekpodcast@gmail.com, visit our merch store at gamers-week-podcast.creator-spring.com, or if you want to do it the easy way, follow the link in the show notes. Or join us on Patreon at patreon.com/gamersweek. And finally, since you made it all the way to the end of this episode, please leave us a rating and review to let us know how we did. We really do value your feedback. While you're there, consider subscribing on iTunes, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice. Good night, John Boy.
Well played. Well played. Good night, everybody.
Yeah, good night.
Good night. Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut.
Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut.
Welcome to Gamers Week Uncut, patrons with benefits. This is the unscripted, patron-only bonus cast with less editing and more dirty jokes. We don't know where the conversation will go, but we're sure it will be weird.
This fish just went right on my nipple, and I'm just like,
I Google Street Fighter 6. The first search result that comes up is people think they can see Ryu's in the Street Fighter 6 reveal.
Listen up here, kids. You're not going to want to get one of those VDSTDs things, right? Make it fall off. When you go, grab a pro. You'll be doing it for America.
that was perfect.
If you want to hear weekly episodes of our patron-only bonus cast, join us at patreon.com/gamersweek.